Greg Madison's no longer part of the deal, Tony. Your thoughts about him parting ways and retiring?
I don't think it's really much of a surprise because once you get to a certain age as a coach, every year seems to be, well, is this the year? And, he put his 2 years in, and you were wondering if this was going to happen this year. And I'm just interested to see where they go from here. There's, Ryan Day we talked to him last week about it, and he wasn't sure if he's going to go keep it in-house or look outside. And then if he does look outside, is it going to be somebody who is familiar with the one high defense that they want to run? Or will it be somebody outside the box who will bring in a new thinking or different thinking about what they run and go from there? So I'm interested to see what Ryan Day eventually decides, but the retirement isn't, I think this is pretty expected, even since the beginning of the year. And as we know, one of the things Urban Meyer did and a lot of head coaches do, they just have a list of coaches that they keep on the ready in terms of, I would hire this guy if the opportunity came. And I'm sure Ryan Day has his own list of guys, and it's worked out pretty well in the past. We saw, Jeff Hafley come out of nowhere, essentially out of the NFL, and do really well. And, I know there's some names out there, but it almost feels like if you know the names, then maybe or like the lesser known they are, maybe the better. Like Jeff Hafley was pretty unknown to Ohio State people. Ryan Day was pretty unknown to Ohio State people when Urban hired him. So I'm interested to see which way he goes, because it could be a number of different ways.
Yeah. Madison had a great football coaching career. I don't have his entire resume in front of me, but I know that he was at Michigan for some of their glory days in the 90s and 2000s, and with Urban, I think down at Florida for a little bit, NFL for a little bit, and back with Michigan when Jim Harbaugh took over. I don't know if he went in there with him or was retained or whatever, but at any rate, was at Michigan, and he and Day had been acquainted, both on the staff at Florida way back when. I think Day would have been a graduate assistant probably at that point, but at any rate, well acquainted. And when Day got the opportunity to take over the Ohio State program, he made a call to Madison and said, hey, do you want to, quit associating yourself with losers and come be with the winners? And no, he probably didn't say it that way, but in a sense, that's what it was. I mean, he got 2 Big Ten championships and 2 college football playoff berths out of his 2 years at Ohio State. And, where that leaves his legacy at Michigan, I don't know. And I don't think he probably really even cares. But 2 great years, and he helped Ryan Day launch the program at Ohio State, launch his program. I think that's what Ryan Day was hoping for when he made that phone call to Greg Madison to say, look, I need help getting this thing off the ground. And he worked hand in hand with Hafley the first year. This year with Kerry Combs, they were kind of working together on the defense. At times it was good. At times it wasn't very good. And I don't think him leaving is an indication because of the defense. I think it was just his time. And I think he was ready. And I think the problem that Ryan Day now has is, how do you get somebody who is top quality who's going to come in and answer to Kerry Combs? I think that's a conundrum right there, that whoever you hire is going to want to call the shots if they're any good at all. So you have your positions pretty well covered. Madison was somewhat of a floater, although he worked quite a bit, I think, with the linebackers and maybe a little bit with the defensive ends as well, since he had experience coaching those positions previously. So he kind of floated and was kind of an overseer and kind of an eyes and ears guy, I think, for the coordinator and the head coach. So I think that was good. Whether they find somebody, I thought about Mike Hankwitz right away from Northwestern. I have no idea schematically or what's the word I'm looking for, philosophy-wise, whether he'd be a fit, whether he advocates whatever, but he'd be a good overseer. If they go the overseer route, he just retired, so that may not be what they're looking at in particular, but perhaps that type of a person. At the other end of it, do you jumble up the positions, which obviously Larry Johnson's been great at defensive line. Al Washington, I think, has done okay at linebacker. The linebacker play the last 2 years was better than it was the 2 years prior to that, although some of that was the guys growing up. They graduated from freshmen and sophomores to juniors and seniors. And then secondary, Matt Barnes has been doing the safeties and special teams, and Kerry Combs was doing the corners. Do you hire somebody to do the corners and make Combs the full-time overseer? Although Combs loves having his hands dirty down there, watching every rep, no, you need to reroute him. No, you need to high point the ball. No, you needed to blah, blah. I mean, he loves being down there and giving the immediate feedback. So I don't know how that's going to play out, but I think there's a bit of a sticky wicket here for Ryan Day. If he had the 1A job that's going to pay somebody $1.5 million to call the defense and be the one, not the 1A, to be the one, then he'd have every guy in the country asking for that job, because there is no better job than that. But when you're talking about only paying somebody about $1 million to be the co and maybe coach a position and recruit and blah, 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 that's not something that a guy's going to leave a Power 5 defensive coordinator job to come to Ohio State and do. They're just not going to do that. So, they're probably making a similar amount of money, and they have the say wherever they are. So it's a tough spot for Coach Day. And does he get a young up-and-comer? Does he get a veteran? I'm interested to see, does he get a guy with Ohio ties? Marcus Freeman, would have been – again, we don't know philosophy-wise what he does or what he fits, what Ryan Day wants. Obviously, Marcus Freeman played for Jim Tressel and Luke Fickell and Jim Haycock in his time at Ohio State almost 15, 16 years ago now. And there's, obviously been a bit of a divorce there. I mean, none of those people remain on the staff at Ohio State, and there's no input, to put a good word. I mean, Gene Smith was here when he was a player, but otherwise, it's not a seamless fit that he would come in and work for people he's acquainted with. So timing is off on that. Would he come here to be the co? I don't know. He's at Notre Dame now as the one. So I don't know. But that's long and short of it. That's my thought, is that Coach Day's in a real tough bind here.
Well, and he was able to get Greg Madison to come to Ohio State with the lure of, you can be a coordinator again, and that was something he wanted to do again, because he was no longer a coordinator at Michigan, because that was Don Brown's job. So this gave him a little bit more duty. But I'm laughing at the thought of Kerry Combs not having a position, because even Greg Madison got bored and got antsy not having a position, so he had to take over the Sams for the Buckeyes. I'm just imagining poor Kerry Combs drinking all of that Red Bull and still having no position. He would go mad, and we don't want that for him, obviously. But yeah, it's going to be interesting. And that's one reason why I think maybe they just keep it in house, because it's easier and nobody's going to say no to that. It's do you almost have to do what Michigan did and bring in like a linebacker coach from the NFL to become a defensive coordinator, except, as Steve said, you're still going to be a co-defensive coordinator, and maybe not maybe a small co instead of a big co in terms of what you're asked to do. But I think it would be somebody from – the interesting thing is if they get somebody who is more familiar with the one high, that's more of a back end type of thing. Madison was more of a front end type of thing. So do you replace Madison that way, or do you bring in somebody with more knowledge of the defense? And there's just so many different ways they can go, and we could speculate on all of them. But in the end, they may just end up promoting guys from within, like move Matt Barnes to, linebackers, move Al Washington to defensive line, have Larry Johnson be some overseer, or, just moving some chairs. And it certainly wouldn't be chairs on the Titanic. But as we saw with Corey Dennis, the quarterback's coach, that was kept in house. He could have gone, and I'm sure people would have killed to be able to come to Ohio State and be the quarterback's coach. But also, as Steve said, to go on with this, what duties do you actually have? Ryan Day is also a quarterback's coach. So what kind of role would that have been for anybody coming from the outside? And the same thing is here is what exactly are you going to ask the guy to do? Is it going to be less than what he's doing for maybe a little bit more, or but it is also an opportunity to coach at Ohio State, and there will always be resumes coming in. But Ohio State really likes their young coaching staff, and maybe they just decide to keep it all in house.
Yep. There is a school of thought that you could go with another young guy. The funny thought that I had as I was listening to Tony is the easy homework assignment for anybody who wants this job is to send them the YouTube links to the Indiana game and to the Alabama game and say, or at least the second half of the Indiana game and all 4 quarters of the Alabama game, and say, what were we trying to do? What were we doing wrong? Give them a little bit of a thumbnail sketch of what your personnel situation was. Let them know, okay, we're playing without 2 of our best defensive linemen. But what were we trying to do? What do you think we should have done? What do you think we should do going forward, knowing our personnel grouping? And the thing that Urban Meyer always talked about was how Larry Johnson was a great defensive line coach. And you could almost hear in Urban Meyer's tone that he wouldn't have minded shifting to a 3-4 or whatever. But he's like, well, we've recruited these great defensive ends like the Bosa's and Chase Young. And, maybe, we need to stay. Larry does a great job developing all 4 of those positions. We need to have 4 defensive linemen on the field. Well, maybe this is the time where you blow that up and go to a 3-4. And I'm just speaking because I think this is kind of like the Clemson Orange Bowl back in 2013 when you watched that implosion and you knew that I looked at Urban Meyer and I said, how are you going to fix this? And he's like, oh, don't worry, we're going to get it fixed. He already had Everett Withers jumping off point in mind, I think. And so I think blowing this thing up is not out of the realm of possibility. Again, I don't know what the ramifications of going to a 3-3-5, 3-4-4, 4-2-5, however you want to do it, however you want to mix and match it. But to me, I think that anything and everything is on the table, and now is the time between now and March 1st, when you're going to start spring football, is when you need to really get this thing nailed down.
Yeah, you wonder how much of that is a combination of reviewing the roster, and this might seem a little short-sighted, but it's reality, reviewing the roster and saying, these are our best players, therefore this scheme fits that, or I'm sure this doesn't come into play too much, but there's a thought given to, we play in this division, we play in this conference, these are the things that we have to face, versus just, this is our philosophy, regardless of the Jimmys and Joes. I'm sure Ryan Day has his thoughts about what defenses are most effective or what defenses are tougher to game plan against, or he thinks are most effective, if everything else being equal.
No, the coaching against certain types of defenses is exactly my understanding is that's the defense that has given him trouble over the years. And so that's the one you want. It's no different than Urban Meyer wanting a quarterback who can run, because those are always pains to defend. And so that's, his defenses didn't like dealing with those types of quarterbacks. So gosh, if the defense doesn't want that, maybe that's what you do on offense. And so when you find a defense that gives you trouble, there's a reason for it. And it gave Clemson all kinds of trouble in 2019 until Shaun Wade went down. And it would have given anybody trouble until Shaun Wade went down. And this year's personnel just didn't have it, wasn't able to live up to that or do that. Because when you're playing 4 down linemen and 4 linebackers against Alabama, it's because you have nobody in the secondary left that you're playing as many people as you can trust. And Marcus Hooker missed the last 3 games on defense. He wasn't able to play. You're down to freshmen that you don't want to put out there, and you put your seniors out there just because they know where they're supposed to be, but then they get matched up against guys they should never be defending. And so I still think the one high can work. You just have to have the personnel. And Remember Jim Tressel always saying you steer the offense to the personnel you have. You have to do the same thing on defense because you saw what happens when you don't. And I don't think it's the system doesn't work. The system works. It was very, very good in 2019. It was very good at times in 2020. It's just when it all goes bad, you don't have guys that can. If there's no next man up, eventually things are going to look pretty bad, and they did at the end for the Buckeyes. I think it all comes down to the freshmen in 2020. What do they look like as second-year players? What do these incoming guys look like? I know they would rather have had more cornerbacks coming in early. I think only one came in of their 3 or 4 that they signed, and they could have used all of them to come in early and try to just compete and build up that room. But again, I've said this before the season, maybe the most important loss of the entire roster was Jordan Fuller, because at that one high safety, he cleans up everything. He allows you to play this defense. And you can replace Chase Young because you've got a bunch of other defensive ends. And no, nobody's as good as Chase Young, but you can make up for it. You can't make up for not having somebody that can do what Jordan Fuller could do. And that's what this defense needs. And if they don't have it, then you can't play it.